Nice to see you. It feels like springtime here in Victoria. We're very fortunate to be enjoying a nice day here. I hope everybody watching is enjoying nice weather where you are. Because one of the things that's really become apparent to us over the last 48 hours or so is that the weather is about as certain as the announcements that we've been seeing from the President of the United States. As British Columbians, we know we need to be prepared for anything when it comes to weather, and we also need to be prepared for anything when it comes to the President's announcements. Relying on the President of the United States and his pronouncements, whether it's to impose tariffs or withdraw tariffs or what his plans are, we got to be prepared and stand on our own 2 feet, and that's what we're doing. Today, I'm happy to share with you that we are advancing our work with government on buying Canadian, buying from countries other than the United States, to make sure that we're supporting Canadians, we're supporting British Columbians in as many ways as we can. Our first direction to Crown corporations and to government as a whole was to prefer Canadian products when you're buying Canadian products, just like people at home, when you're at the grocery store, you're looking at the shelf, you're comparing products, people expect the government to do the same thing. That's what this is about. Today's announcement, our procurement directive is going further. I'm sending directions to Crown corporations, to the heads of government, to do a few things. One is to look at your contracts. Can you cancel contracts with American companies and replace them with Canadian companies? Make sure that you're canceling travel that's not essential. Look at the subscriptions in your office. Make sure you're canceling American subscriptions. Minimize your participation in American trade organizations, and ensure that you're upholding the expectations that all British Columbians have, that when possible, when there's a viable Canadian alternative, you're choosing that company, you're choosing that publication, you're choosing that organization. This is an action that is legislatively underpinned by provisions of Bill 7, our tariff bill that we're hopeful will pass in this legislative session. And it is a way for us to do what people are doing at home right now, supporting BC, supporting Canadians, and building trade markets with countries around the world other than the United States, who is threatening our sovereignty, threatening our economy, threatening the people of British Columbia. Our strategy on this as part of Team Canada has been working. We've seen Alaskan Congresswoman Lisa Murkowski step up and join with Democrats to vote against the President's repeated attacks on our sovereignty and tariffs. We've seen Americans come out in cities across the United States to protest against the President's tariff action and to demand that he reconsider. And I don't think there's a person that doesn't have an American friend or relative that hasn't come up and said something very familiar to all of us as Canadians. I'm sorry. We've got to keep the pressure on. We are stronger and more united than ever before. We're standing up for BC. We're standing up for Canada. It's a very proud moment for all Canadians. And this announcement today is just part of how government can continue that work and join with British Columbians in the efforts that you're making at home. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. For everyone on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. We will start with questions on the ground. We have Richard Zussman, Global News.
You stood here with Prime Minister Mark Carney earlier this week. We then saw a statement from your office about some of the things discussed. Do you have a firm deal with the federal government when it comes to support for forestry workers? At one point, does that kick in? And what sort of other supports have you gotten from Ottawa? Does that include specifics around things like the Massey and infrastructure money that you've asked for to deal with, our transportation lines if we are going to be improving our connectivity within this country?
Yeah, the instability at the federal government level has been very unhelpful in this moment for our country. I'm glad it's almost over. It's made it very difficult for us to be able to, especially during the election campaign, to hammer out the kinds of initiatives and programs that we need to cooperate with the federal government on. Before dissolving Parliament, the Prime Minister took steps with his team to use existing programs to support British Columbians and all Canadians who may be facing impacts from tariffs, using the employment insurance scheme of the federal government, using federal business programs to provide loans. It's not sufficient, but it is something. What we need to do is have the federal government in place, sitting in Parliament, initiating programs that will make a difference for British Columbians in the softwood lumber industry and seafood industry that are already affected by this global trade war, and make sure that they're also meeting the needs of other Canadians. I was very clear with the Prime Minister that it is vital that the money that's collected from tariffs that are being imposed on American goods that are coming into Canada goes back to the workers and companies that are affected by American tariffs. He was very receptive to that. And he has made commitments on the campaign trail for his federal Liberal Party that are broadly in keeping with what we want to see in terms of infrastructure and in terms of programs to support people, but so have the other parties. So it'll really depend on making sure that whoever's elected to the office of Prime Minister ensures that they're delivering on those commitments made to British Columbians and doing it in a fair way that recognizes actual impact to British Columbians. That's all that we ask. And we stand supporting other provinces as well that are affected in different ways.
To Richard for a follow-up.
You mentioned promises on the campaign trail. We've heard from both Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney over the last 48 hours on crime. Pierre Poilievre is calling on substantial changes when it comes to bail reform, 3 strikes and you're out policy. Mark Carney's plan does not go as far in terms of bail reform. Would you like to see the federal government tougher on bail, especially when it comes to those instances of repeat offenders? And does our system have the capacity to deal with holding individuals longer if we do make changes to bail reform?
British Columbians have been very frustrated, and I share the frustration with the release of repeat violent offenders that go on to commit other offenses in our province. And it's not just here. We joined with premiers across the country. BC led the way with Ontario to ask the federal government for changes. First round of changes were made. We then signed on to a second letter, this one led out of Manitoba, on the same issue recently to the Prime Minister, asking for changes to bail, given that the first round has not fully addressed our concerns. I'm glad to see broad recognition that these bail rules need to change. They need to change in a way that are going to survive court challenges and make a meaningful difference. Having provisions tied up all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada and uncertainty about criminal justice initiatives is not helpful. And so making sure whatever proposals are put forward by whatever party that they're going to survive these constitutional challenges is going to be critically important, because people want a difference in the community and they want to see that action.
Next, we have a question. Rob Shaw, Check News.
Just to build on Richard's question there, are you concerned about the Massey Tunnel project? There's no federal funding. We're 8 years in. Nothing's happened. It doesn't appear to be a project that's moving with much speed. Are you concerned that the government made the right decision and that it's able to proceed on this project?
Well, yeah, we are proceeding with the Massey Tunnel project. It's a big project, and it's a significant project that affects the Fraser River that has significant impacts in terms of salmon, as well as just the use of the working river. It's a major project and it's a priority for our government. I have been very frustrated by the fact that we haven't seen sufficient federal support for that project. This is part of our national trade corridor. It is one bottleneck among many that we need to sit down with the federal government and identify and address. I'm reassured by comments I've heard from all party leaders that they are committed to addressing those bottlenecks across our goods movement corridors throughout British Columbia, and also corridors that people depend on just to get to and from work. So I'm hopeful, but the initial discussions we had with the federal government in terms of their support for the project wouldn't even cover the interest on the cost of the project, let alone a substantial part of the capital that's required to build this out. So my expectation of whoever shows up that they do better than Prime Minister Trudeau did in terms of prioritizing this project.
Rob Shaw for a follow-up.
Could you talk to us a little bit about Dr. Ballam's first review of the Provincial Health Services Authority? There's no terms of reference. There's no written report coming. There's no timeline. and there's no cost savings identified as a target. Does that seem to you like it's set up for success in terms of achieving savings and efficiencies in the PHSA?
Yeah, the last thing that people want when it comes to administrative costs in healthcare is a lengthy report outlining what needs to be done. Penny is in there. She's in the wiring of PHSA. She is identifying in real time cost savings for British Columbians. My commitment to British Columbians has three different parts to it. One is for the budget as a whole, that we are moving towards balance, that we're identifying cost savings and reducing administrative costs across government while protecting frontline services. Specifically to healthcare, that we're looking after those doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals that look after us and keeping those services going while driving down what we can all identify as significant expansion of administrative costs within the health authorities. And Penny's starting that work with PHSA. And finally, I have a goal of reducing the gap between frontline healthcare workers and government. When there's a health authority between us, often frontline healthcare worker messages are they're not making it to government, and people feel intimidated about bringing messages forward about how we can improve our healthcare system. And I want to hear from those frontline healthcare workers. So leaning out our health authorities so that those messages can get through to government and we can strengthen our healthcare system is very crucial.
Next, we have a question from Katie DeRosa, CBC.
Premier, do you have any examples of contracts that will be canceled that were American contracts that are shifting to Canadian? Will the Crown corporations be forced to cancel those contracts or just encouraged? And do you have a price tag for all of that?
Yeah, the work that we're asking government and Crown corporations to do is to look at their contracts with American service providers, American goods providers, and where viable, substitute Canadian or non-American providers. Now, we identified during COVID, a lot of medical supplies are not produced here in Canada that we're very dependent on. They come from the United States. Obviously, these are the kinds of things that we're not going to be able to substitute. I'm sure many British Columbians have had the experience. You're looking at the Canadian product and it's just way more expensive than the American. You want to do the right thing, but at the same time, you've got a family budget. You have to make those difficult decisions. We're going to do the same thing in government. We're not going to incur dramatic additional costs in order to be able to achieve this. So we are expecting good judgment from the Crown corporations and from government looking at this. But wherever viable, they should be substituting for American goods and services. We've done some blunt work at the provincial government level. We were looking at a Starlink contract for last mile internet delivery in the province. We are no longer looking at that, and we're now identifying alternatives. And I know that work is happening across government, but we are these are going to be smaller contracts. They're going to be service contracts specific to individual Crown corporations, and they're the best place to be able to identify where they can make those changes.
Back to Katie for a follow-up.
So if this is essentially voluntary, not mandatory, what's to say this is not just symbolism as opposed to a true, shift in policy?
It's not correct that it's voluntary. This is a direction that's coming from me to government through the head of the public service and to the boards of directors and to the Crown corporations that we're responsible for. They must do this work. Where it's not possible to substitute Canadian products, they need to work with suppliers to try to find ways to encourage the development of Canadian products and services that'll substitute for American. This is a chance for us to build up our provincial economy and our national economy to respond to what the Americans are doing. And the reason why we've not ever done this previously is because we had trade obligations to the United States. These are trade obligations that the president walked away from in order to attempt to destroy our economy and turn us into the 51st state. So it gives us a chance to build up our resilience, to stand on our own feet and develop Canadian industry unapologetically, and to use this opportunity and the purchasing strength of government to make our economy stronger.
Rob Butham, CTV.
Oh, hi, Premier. You've previously announced that there would be this procurement direction. I just want to understand what is new about today's announcement. Can you identify some elements that are new apart from what you've previously announced on this front?
Yeah, the first announcement was in relation to go forward. As you move forward, please try to identify Canadian goods and services that you can prefer to American. This is a look at your existing contracts. It's a deeper dive into purchases that have already been made or existing service contracts from Americans. It's also broader. It goes into subscriptions, it goes into discretionary travel, industrial association groups, and really every aspect of money that might be spent on American services or goods.
Follow up from Rob?
I do. As we talked about last week, I guess Corinne Kirkpatrick is forming this new centre party in BC. Presumably that her goal would be to attract, current right of centre members. Is this good news for you? She also says that she's got interest from NDP, former NDP members. What's your reaction to this?
I wish her the best of luck. It's a hard slog starting a new party, but if anyone can do it, it's probably Karen Kirkpatrick. I would encourage her to look at the options that are available. The British Columbians right now are seeing a conservative leader who is in Ottawa at a conference that is hosting a number of pro-Trump officials, pro-tariff officials. The Conservatives are advocating for one of them for the separation of Western Canada. British Columbians really have a choice between two shades of orange, I guess, when you get right down to it. And I hope they choose the NDP orange instead of the Trump orange.
Vaughn Palmer, Vancouver Sun.
Thanks, Premier. Under the directive you've issued today, will the province be reconsidering its membership in PNWR and in attending PNWR meetings?
Yeah, thanks, Vaughn. We've had some discussions about PNWR, and we've decided to maintain our membership in that organization. This is an organization of political officials across the Northwest, which includes state congresspeople, governors, and others that come together for meetings. Our relationship at the political level to speak with Republicans particularly, to identify people who are friendly to our cause and encourage them to deliver the message to the president and to other Republicans is something that we can't pass up on, so we'll continue to do the work with PNWR.
Vaughn for a follow-up.
The legislature committee's been struck to take a look at electoral reform, including the possibility of proportional representation. I can't resist asking, are we looking at another referendum, and are you going to write the questions this time?
Vaughn, you're triggering my trauma. I thought this was a safe space. We have an electoral committee. They are the primary work, and I think the work that the British Columbians hope they do with vigor and thorough review is to look at our last election. It took a long time to get to a final result. There was ballot boxes found well after the initial count that raised a lot of concerns on both sides of the House. And so to meet with the head of Elections BC to do that review and to understand how we can strengthen and improve our electoral system, especially in close elections, is going to be is crucially important. As a part of that work, we agreed with the Green Party to add a provision that the committee can also call and hear from witnesses about different electoral systems and different ways of looking at how we elect people in British Columbia. And it's a big priority for the Green Party, and it's not currently a priority for us, but it was part of our agreement, and we're going to honor that.
Wolf Deppner, Black Press.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Premier, I understand that you'll be meeting with the President and CEO of the BC Chamber of Commerce to discuss business in British Columbia. Back in late 2024, you promised business a reset. How would you say that reset has gone so far in light of some of the concerns from businesses about the state of the public finances in terms of taxes, in terms of regulations, and again, concerns from the business community about sort of getting the financial house in order to avoid perhaps drastic cuts similar to the ones that we saw during the early 1990s when the Liberals, the federal Liberals, had to fix the federal budget. So can you talk about sort of the current state of your relationship with the business community? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Wolf. We're working very closely with the business community right now around the tariff response table. That work is going well. The Chamber is part of that group, as is the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade and the BC Business Council. It's unprecedented work. We've got business leaders, Indigenous leaders, and labor leaders all at the same table to respond to protect British Columbians and respond quickly to what we're facing. I agree with them. Government needs to be moving towards balance. That's why we're currently doing a review of all programs to reduce administrative spending while protecting frontline services for British Columbians. And we also have listened to the business community when they've raised concerns about a component of Bill 7. We pulled that section from the bill. When we had the opportunity to remove the consumer carbon tax, which also had a very beneficial impact, for example, for greenhouse operators in our province, as well as businesses that rely on deliveries that use either diesel or gas, reducing their expenses, we acted as quickly as we could to remove the carbon tax. We're going to continue to work closely with business. We won't always be able to meet all of their expectations and demands, but my commitment to them is to listen, to work with them on solutions that work for British Columbians, and to grow our economy, grow our prosperity despite the threats we face from the United States.
And to Wolf for a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you. And earlier you mentioned the tariffs, and at the risk of asking a question about global trade, when things move very quickly, we seem to be in a situation where two camps are emerging. On one hand, the United States standing alone. On the other hand, China as the main antagonist, and any number of countries, including the European Union, as well as other countries in Asia, moving towards China or sort of strengthening relationships again with China. What do you see BC fit into this debate? Do you foresee BC moving closer to China? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that it may be a bit of a nuance there, Wolf. Canada, for some reason, despite the 90-day pause put in place by the president in respect of his tariffs on all these other countries, we didn't benefit from that 90-day pause. For some reason, he seems to have singled out Canada, our softwood industry, our auto industry, and he's committed to come after pharmaceuticals as well. Like where's our 90-day pause? And so the unique and special derogatory, insulting, and targeting treatment from the president is inexcusable, and I don't feel that we've had favorable treatment, just the opposite. With respect to what's our role here in BC and Canada right now, I've encouraged the Prime Minister build a coalition of countries that value democracy, that value the human rights, that value environmental protection, and that value free trade, and work together with them. We've got many countries that are facing threats from the U.S. in Asia, Japan, South Korea, Singapore. We've got Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the EU, the Philippines. I could go on. India. There are many countries that we need to be reaching out to right now to have conversations, to expand our trade, to respond to the U.S. in a coordinated way. I'm encouraging him to do that. I was thrilled to see his comments to that effect because I think it's the direction that we need to go.
We're going to take a couple of questions from the phone line. To those on the phone, please make sure you are unmuted and please wait until you're called upon. First, we have Ashley Joannou, Canadian Press.
Hi, thank you. So this latest directive already has the pretty big caveat of where viable. That seems pretty subjective. I guess I'm wondering how much the government is willing to spend. Is spending 10% more in the name of using Canadian products worthwhile to you, or no more money? What do you mean by where viable, and how much are you willing to put towards making these changes that you think are important?
Yeah, I'd love to be as prescriptive as possible, but the scale and scope of the different contracts that Crown corporations and government enters into makes that almost impossible. Like 10% is fine on a magazine subscription, but 10% on a $1 billion project is not. And so making sure that trusting in the discretion of the people who make these decisions to be able to make those judgment calls is really important. There are many ready Canadian substitutions for American products and services that are available at equivalent cost to Crown corporations and to government, and wherever possible, our expectation is that these crown corporations and that government officials make the decision to switch to those. They have direction from me that is what is to happen, and that's what our expectation is. And if we have to revisit to refine some of those provisions or it's not being taken seriously, then we will.
To Ashley for a follow-up.
I'm wondering why you think that wasn't happening before this trade war issue happened. If there are so many viable Canadian options, why hasn't it always been the default of government to use Canadian products?
Because we entered into a trade agreement with the United States where we agreed to treat American companies as equivalent to Canadian companies for the purposes of government procurement. And where if we didn't do that, they could lodge a complaint with us and obtain damages from Canada or impose reciprocal tariffs against Canada to punish Canada for those actions. So the best example I can give you is where government directed that through government-issued liquor licenses to grocery stores, the grocery stores could only stock BC wine on the shelves. The American government, as well as the New Zealand and Australian governments, brought this forward as trade irritants and complaints to the government, which ultimately resulted in Canada agreeing with the government of BC that we would add international and American wines onto the shelf in grocery stores to comply with our trade obligations. Obviously, with the president having ripped up CUSMA, the agreement that he negotiated and signed, calling it a ripoff and a scam, then obviously it creates the opportunity for us to prefer BC and Canadian products without fear of violating the agreement that he has already trampled under his feet.
Mike Hagar, Globe and Mail. Mike?
Hey, thanks for taking questions. Hi, thanks for taking questions. Just wondering, you look at a giant like Amazon, AWS provides a ton of services to the provincial government, federal government, all governments. Is their presence concerning to you, given their ownership? If not, why not? And if so, how hopeful are you that a company so entrenched in government business can the contract can be modified?
Yeah, one of the exemptions under our trade agreement and that British Columbia has leveraged pretty heavily using our privacy laws is requiring data storage and cloud storage for government records to be in Canada. American companies, to the extent that they deal with British Columbia when it comes to cloud services, must use Canadian servers. Everything must be here in Canada, and it must be contained in Canada. So there are very limited exceptions to that where there is no available substitute. So, for example, there was a health innovation that required sending heart cardiac signals to the United States for processing and then back. We made exceptions under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act to allow for that to happen. But for the most part, these cloud services containing British Columbians records are all contained here in Canada.
To Mike for a follow-up.
Sorry, you didn't really answer whether AWS is too entwined with your government systems to really be disentangled. And then just wondering where you're at with the Washington State governor's visit, and when's the last time you talked to the Alaskan governor, and what was the nature of that discussion?
Yeah, on Amazon, they have, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 employees here in British Columbia. They have extensive server architecture here in British Columbia, and so does Microsoft. These are very likely examples of services where it's challenging to find Canadian companies to provide a substitute cloud service that would meet the requirements of our Privacy Acts as well as our other obligations. So we're not, to the best of my knowledge, we're not currently proposing that be impacted here. But if there are Canadian substitutes, that we expect that Crown corporations and others seek ways to find ways to support Canadian companies. With respect to visits with other government officials, I have solicited and encouraged both Governor Ferguson from Washington State, as well as leaders from Congress in Washington State to come up to Vancouver on a friendship tour to come and know that the people-to-people ties between the people of Washington State and the people of British Columbia are strong and continue. And I hope and expect that they'll be taking us up on that, and I look forward to sharing details with you once we get that settled. We're also going to be exchanging a cabinet minister exchange with Washington State so that we can learn from each other. Washington State, their governor has been strong in condemning the tariffs and the attacks on Canada's sovereignty. Glad to stand with them. I haven't had the opportunity to reach out to Congresswoman Murkowski yet to thank her for her efforts to condemn the tariffs in her role as an elected official from Alaska. But I look forward to doing so, and I'll thank her publicly right now for that.
Thanks, everyone. That's all we have time for today.
Thank you.